believe that hugely successful that benefits everything America has to offer should not be able to game the system and avoid paying their fair, especially while companies who high-priced lawyers and lobbyists end up paying more. Alongside tax reform, it's time to stand up to efforts across our country to undermine worker power, which has been proven again and again to drive up wages. Republican governors like Scott Walker have made their names stomping on workers' rights, and practically all the Republican candidates hope to do the same as president. I will fight back against these mean-spirited, misguided attacks. Evidence of unions may be responsible for a third of the increase of inequality among men. So if we want to get serious about raising incomes, we have to get serious about supporting union workers. Let me just say a word here about trade. The Greek crisis, as well as the Chinese stock market, have reminded us that growth here at home and growth an ocean away are linked in a common global economy. Trade has been a major driver of the economy over recent decades, but it has also contributed to hollowing out our manufacturing base and many hardworking communities. So we do need to set a high bar for trade agreements. We should support them if they create jobs, raise wages, and advance our national security. And we should be prepared to walk away if they don't. We need to create opportunity for more Americans. I love the saying by Abraham Lincoln, who in many ways was not only the president who saved our union, but the president who understood profoundly the importance of the middle class and the importance of government playing its role in providing opportunities. He talked about giving Americans a fair chance in the race of life. I believe that with all my heart, but I also believe it has to start really early, at birth. High quality early learning, especially in the first 5 years, can set children on the course for future success and raise lifetime incomes by 25%. And I'm committed to seeing every 4-year-old in America have access to high-quality preschool in the next 10 years. But I want to do more. I want to call for a great outpouring of support from our faith community, our business community, our academic institutions, from philanthropy and civic groups and concerned citizens to really help parents, particularly parents who are facing a lot of obstacles, to really help prepare their own children in that 0 to 4 age group. 80% of your brain is physically formed by the age of 3. That's why families like mine read, talk, and sing endlessly to our granddaughter. I've said that her first words are going to be enough for me. Singing. But we do it not only because we love doing it, even though I'll admit it's a little embarrassing, reading a book to a 2-week-old or a 6-week-old or a 10-week-old. But we do it because we understand it's building her capacity for learning. And the research shows by the time she enters kindergarten, she will have heard 30 million more words than a child from a less advantaged background. Think of what we are losing because we're not doing everything we can to reach out to those families. And we know, again, from so much research here in the United States and around the world, that early help, that mentoring, that intervention to help those often stressed out young moms understand more about what they can do and to avoid the difficulties that stand in the way of their being able to really get their child off to the best possible start. We also have to invest in our students and our teachers at every level. And in the coming weeks and months, I will lay out specific steps to improve our schools, make college truly affordable, and help Americans refinance their student debt. And let's embrace the idea of lifelong learning. In an age of technological change, we need to provide pathways to get skills and credentials for new occupations and create online platforms to connect workers to jobs. There are exciting efforts underway, and I want to support and scale the ones that show results. As we pursue all these policies, we can't forget our fellow Americans hit so hard and left behind by this changing world, from the inner cities to coal country to Indian country. Talent is universal. You find it everywhere, but opportunity is not. There are nearly 6 million young people aged 16 to 24 in America today who are not in school or at work. The numbers for young people of color are particularly staggering. A quarter of young black men and nearly 15% of all Latino youth cannot find a job. We've got to do a better way of coming up to match the growing middle-class incomes we want to generate with more pathways into the middle class. I firmly believe that the best anti-poverty program is a job, but that's hard to say if there aren't enough jobs for people that we're trying to help lift themselves out of poverty. That's why I've called for reviving the New Markets Tax Credit and empowerment zones to create greater incentives to invest in poor and remote areas. When all Americans have the chance to study hard, work hard, and share in our country's prosperity, that's fair growth. It's what I've always believed in, and it's what I will fight for as president. Now, the third key driver of income alongside strong growth and fair growth must be long-term growth. Too many pressures in our economy push us toward short-termism. Many business leaders see this. They've talked to me about it. One has called it the problem of quarterly capitalism. They say everything's focused on the next earnings report or the short-term share price. And the result is too little attention on the sources of long-term growth, research and development, physical capital, and talent. Net business investment, which includes things like factories, machines, and research labs, have declined as a share of the economy. In recent years, some of our biggest companies have spent more than half their earnings to buy back their own stock, and another third or more to pay dividends. That doesn't leave a lot left to raise pay or invest in the workers who made those profits possible, or to make new investments necessary to ensure a company's future success. These trends need to change. And I believe that many business leaders are eager to embrace their responsibilities, not just to today's share price, but also to workers, communities, and ultimately to our country and indeed our planet. Now, I'm not talking about charity. I'm talking about clear-eyed capitalism. Many companies have prospered by improving wages and training their workers that then yields higher productivity, better service, and larger profits. Now, it's easy to try to cut costs by holding down or even decreasing pay and other investments to inflate quarterly stock prices. But I would argue that's bad for business in the long run, and it's really bad for our country. Workers are assets. Investing in them pays off. Higher wages pay off. Training pays off. To help more companies do that, I proposed a new $1,500 tax credit for every worker they train and hire. And I will soon be proposing a new plan to reform capital gains taxes to reward longer-term investments that create jobs more than just quick trades. I will also propose reforms to help CEOs and shareholders alike focus on the next decade rather than just the next day. Making sure stock buybacks aren't being used only for an immediate boost in share prices, empowering outside investors who want to build companies, but discouraging cut-and-run shareholders who act more like old-school corporate raiders. And nowhere will the shift from short-term to long-term be more important than on Wall Street. As a former senator from New York, I know firsthand the role that Wall Street can and should play in our economy, helping Main Street grow and prosper, and boosting new companies that make America more competitive globally. But as we all know, in the years before the crash, financial firms piled risk upon risk, and regulators in Washington either couldn't or wouldn't keep up. I was alarmed by this gathering storm and called for addressing the risks of derivatives, cracking down on subprime mortgages, and improving financial oversight. Under President Obama's leadership, we've imposed tough new rules that deal with some of the challenges on Wall Street. But those rules have been under assault by Republicans in Congress and those running for president. I will fight back against these attacks and protect the reforms we've made. We can do that and still ease burdens on community banks to encourage responsible loans to local people and businesses they know and trust. We also have to go beyond Dodd-Frank. Too many of our major financial institutions are still too complex and too risky. And the problems are not limited to the big banks that get all the headlines. Serious risks are emerging from institutions in the so-called shadow banking system, including hedge funds, high-frequency traders, non-bank finance companies, so many new kinds of entities which receive little oversight at all. Stories of misconduct by individuals and institutions in the financial industry are shocking. HSBC allowing drug cartels to launder money, 5 major banks pleading guilty to felony charges for conspiring to manipulate currency exchange and interest rates. There can be no justification or tolerance for this kind of criminal behavior. While institutions have paid large fines, and in some cases admitted guilt, too often it has seemed that the human beings responsible get off with limited consequences, or none at all, even when they've already pocketed the gains. This is wrong, and on my watch, it will change. Over the course of this campaign, I will offer plans to rein in excessive risks on Wall Street and ensure that stock markets work for everyday investors, not just high-frequency traders and those with the best or fastest connections. I will appoint and empower regulators who understand that too big to fail is still too big a problem. We'll ensure that no firm is too complex to manage or oversee. And we will prosecute individuals as well as firms when they commit fraud or other criminal wrongdoing. And when the government recovers money from corporations or individuals for harming the public, it should go into a separate trust fund to benefit the public. It could, for example, help modernize infrastructure or even be returned directly to taxpayers. Now, reform is never easy, but we've done it before in our country, and we have to get it right this time. And yes, we need leadership from the financial industry and across the private sector to join with us. 2 years ago, the head of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Terry Duffy, published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that really caught my attention. He wrote, and I quote, "I'm concerned that those of us in financial services have forgotten who we serve, and that the public knows it. Some Wall Streeters can too easily slip into regarding their work as a kind of money-making game, divorced from the concerns of Main Street," unquote. I think we should listen to Terry Duffy. Of course, long-term growth is only possible if the public sector steps up as well. So it's time to end the era of budget brinkmanship and stop careening from one self-inflicted crisis to another. It's time to stop having debates over the small stuff and focus how we're going to tackle the big stuff together. How do we respond to technological change in a way that creates more good jobs than it displaces or destroys? Can we sustain a boom in advanced manufacturing? What are the best ways to nurture startups outside the successful corridors like Silicon Valley? Questions like these demand thoughtful and mature debate from our policymakers in government, from our leaders in the private sector, our economists, our academics, others who can come together to the table and on behalf of America perform their patriotic duty to make sure our economy keeps working and our middle class keeps growing. Smarter, simpler, more focused itself on long-term investments than short-term politics, and be a better partner to cities, states, and the private sector. Washington has to be a better steward of America's tax dollars and Americans' trust. And please, let's get back to making decisions that rely on evidence more than ideology. I will seek out and welcome any good idea that is actually based on reality. I want to have principled and pragmatic and progressive policies that really move us forward together. And I will propose ways to ensure that our fiscal outlook is sustainable, including by continuing to restrain healthcare costs, which remain one of the key drivers of long-term deficits. I will make sure Washington learns from how well local governments, businesses, and nonprofits are working together in successful cities and towns across America. You know, passing legislation is not the only way to drive progress. As president, I will use the power to convene, connect, and collaborate to build partnerships that actually get things done. Because above all, we have to break out of the poisonous partisan gridlock and focus on the long-term needs of our country. I confess, maybe it's the grandmother in me, but I believe that part of public service is planting trees under whose shade you'll never sit. And the vision I've laid out here today for strong growth, fair growth, and long-term growth, all working together, will get incomes rising again, will help working families get ahead and stay ahead. That is the test of our time. And I'm inviting everyone to please join me to do your part. That's what great countries do. That's what our country always has done. We rise to challenges. It's not about left, right, or center. It's about the future versus the past. I'm running for president to build an America for tomorrow, not yesterday. An America built on growth and fairness. An America where if you do your part, you will reap the reward. Where we his or her God-given potential. Please join me in that mission. Let's